Archbishop Broglio, I'm so grateful that you are allowing us to be in this beautiful chapel today here with you, celebrating Memorial Day weekend. And I think a lot of people have this thought when they think Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully they think about the servicemen and women that you serve. And I'm curious, how did you get to this position? What's your personal story?
Well, I never served in the military, and so I was actually serving in the Vatican Diplomatic Service, and I was the nuncio in the Dominican Republic and the apostolic delegate in Puerto Rico when they asked me if I would accept to serve as the Archbishop for the Military Services. So in a real sense, it came as a surprise to me, but an agreeable surprise. I've been very, very moved to serve the men and women and their families that make up the nation's military and that also are patients in the hospitals of the Department of Veterans Affairs. So it has been a very, very enriching and rewarding ministry. They're wonderful people to take care of.
What is the future for the military archdiocese in terms of recruits, in terms of vocations? I know that the numbers aren't as hopeful as we wish they were, but what can we put our hope in?
Well, certainly the military remains the largest single source of vocations to the priesthood in the United States today. In this most recent CARA survey, I think 4% of those ordained in the United States in 2021 wore the uniform of one of the services, and some 13% came from families where either mom or dad were in the military. So that is a tremendous source. We do have some 43 co-sponsored seminarians. So they're studying for a territorial diocese or a religious order, but also for the Archdiocese for Military Services, in the hopes that when they're ordained, if they're ordained, obviously, that 3 years after their ordination, they will come on active duty for at least 5 years. And so that's a great source of hope certainly for my successor.
Other challenges would be war zones. What does it look like to minister and bring the sacraments in a war zone?
That is a real challenge because obviously the number of priests is limited. So generally they're moved around by helicopter or by convoy. In fact, comes to mind right away, Father Timothy Broglio, who actually was wounded and eventually died. He died in the United States, but was wounded in Iraq because the convoy he was in hit a roadside bomb, and he was on his way to celebrate Mass and minister to his army troops. So the priests are moved around. They'll go to a forward operating base. They might have an hour to hear confessions, celebrate Mass, offer counseling, and then leave again. And so this is it's a tremendous sacrifice, but they do it quite well and they do it quite willingly. And also, it should be pointed out that the military cooperates in moving priests to forward operating bases and also to ships, because not every ship has a Catholic priest. Mm-hmm. So they will helicopter, if they're close, from one ship to another.
What is it like to minister to someone who isn't Catholic? Is that part of the role as well?
There it would be, that's two-pronged. So obviously counseling you can offer to anyone. And I think one thing that's very important for people to know is that what you tell a chaplain, regardless of his religious denomination, stays with the chaplain. He can never be obliged to reveal that. He has 100% confidentiality, and he is the only person on a military installation that has 100% confidentiality. So that is one service that a priest or any chaplain can offer to anyone. The second would be that you provide. So if you have someone, a Muslim, you try to get him a lay leader or get him books or whatever it is that he might need, or space so that he can worship. You would never be required to obviously celebrate those sacraments. Now, we did have a situation several years ago in Iraq where there was only one chaplain at the embassy, and he was a Catholic priest. So he did conduct a liturgy of the word for other Christians who weren't Catholic. But that, he basically said Vespers, so it was quite acceptable both to us and to them.
That's wonderful and creative.
Yes.
So then, what about when they come home? You talked about ministering to veterans. What are some of the services that the Military Archdiocese provides there?
There we provide Catholic priests for all of the hospitals of the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also try to, it's a tight line between how much volunteering you can do at one of these hospitals, but we do try to coordinate that, particularly with the Knights of Columbus and other groups that are willing to help veterans, even with visiting or providing perhaps some other services that might not be available at the medical center. So it is a widespread network, and we have over 200 priests involved in ministry as hospital chaplains at these medical centers.
And going back to the point about interfaith relationships, there are also religious accommodations within the military for minority religions, and I'm assuming also for Catholics. What do those look like, and why are they important?
Well, they're basically, it's a way to respect the conscience and the First Amendment rights of everyone, so that when you raise your right hand to be a member of the military, you don't renounce the First Amendment. It's still yours, which allows you freedom of religion, not just freedom of worship, but freedom of religion. And I think that's very important. So the military goes out of its way then to meet the demands of certain religious groups. For instance, the Sikhs come to mind with the Sikhs come to mind with the turban, and the Muslims sometimes they're allowed to have a beard. I wonder, most of the Eastern Rite priests that I know, or the Eastern Church priests that I know in the military, do not have beards, but I would think you could make an argument for that, since that's really a part of their tradition as well.
Some people call them their articles of faith. It's part of your outward signs of what you believe and,
Exactly.
and your witness, which is really important. I know it's important for us in the evangelization. So then, in thinking about government power and the moments in our lives when the government controls everything, I think of two. I think about prisons, and I think about the military, when you give up your life in duty and service for your country. In those two moments, the government controls everything about you except what you said, your soul, this freedom of conscience. Why is the chaplaincy so important as a reminder of that concept?
I think it's vital, and I think it's vital for the protection of those First Amendment rights, but also for the freedom that a chaplain has to speak the truth to power. And it's curious that the first person in the United States to notice that was George Washington. The first thing he asked for when he accepted his commission as commander-in-chief of the Continental Army was that there be chaplains. Now, there were no Catholic priests because the Catholic population was under 1 million at that time, but he did want chaplains, and he wanted them to tell him the truth. And so I think that provision has been, and I've seen it frequently in the case of Catholic priests, where they're the one person on a ship or on a military installation that can close the door of the commanding officer's quarters and say, "Sir, do you really want to do this? Have you thought about the ramifications of this? Or have you thought about another way to do this?" And I think they can get away with it because they do speak from their conscience, and they're not really that subject to what might happen to them.
They don't have the same consequences on purpose.
Exactly.
And so then when we pray for vocations, who's the patron saint of the Military Archdiocese or the chaplaincy that we can pray to?
St. John Capistrano is certainly the patron of military chaplains. He was a chaplain during the time of the Crusades and is remembered for his assiduous care of the military in Europe. And then, of course, we also have St. John the 23rd, who was a military chaplain during the First World War.
Well, we'll make sure to do that for this Memorial Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.